This video goes over some other features of the writer's voice, specifically metadiscourse and point of view. On the purple square, you'll see some examples of metadiscourse. Phrases like "we can now see that," "perhaps," "for example." You've probably used some of these, if not all of these, in your writing at one point or another. Why is that? Metadiscourse is discourse about discourse. Words that draw attention to the fact that you are writing something. As J.M. Williams says, it's the language we use when we refer to our own thinking and writing as we think and write. Sometimes a teacher may have encouraged you to use signposting, or you might think of metadiscourse simply as transitions. The common feature of all of these words and phrases is that they draw attention to our argument, to what we're saying, and especially what we're going to say next. When you hear or see the words "for example," you kind of expect an example to come next. It can be very frustrating when metadiscourse is misused and you feel misled as an audience member. Metadiscourse can be connectors. Here's our friends, the conjunctive adverbs, again. They're really versatile, aren't they? They connect compound sentences. They shift sentence rhythm by drawing focus. And now we learn they're also metadiscourse. Prepositional phrases, which, as I hope you recall, can function either as adverbs or adjectives, depending on which part of the sentence they modify, also act as metadiscourse. On the other hand, when you use a phrase like this, you're asking your audience to jump over to the other side of the argument with you. And then there's sort of the time-honored transition, time signals. I bet at some point in your junior high or high school career, you wrote a 5-paragraph essay in which you started paragraphs first, next, finally, or first, second, third, and then you wrapped up your 5th paragraph with "in conclusion," unless you had a teacher who said, "No, you may not use these time signals." Well, why not? Why would you forbid students from using metadiscourse connectors if they're all about helping the reader follow your train of thought? Something to think about. Several verbs also function as metadiscourse. As you look at this list, how many of these would you say you use on a regular basis? Do you sometimes use these verbs to avoid saying "said" or "says"? The author says. No, the author suggests. The critic says. The critic contrasts. Can you think of any additional examples of verbs that you think qualify as metadiscourse? What about illustrate? This passage illustrates the underlying Marxist theory in the novel. Sometimes we might infer something suggestive about a poem or a play or a short story. And here are some other examples of metadiscourse that Chapter 7 goes through. One group can be best described as intention announcers. Here's what I, as the author, intend you as the reader to understand. The point is, this is a bad policy. I have shown that students should not be required to take Shakespeare in order to be English majors. Do you have to have these intention announcers on those statements? It's a bad policy. English majors should not have to take Shakespeare. Yeah, these definitely stand on their own as sentences. Why do we use these intention announcers? Is it another way of drawing focus, of telling your reader, maybe not even so subtly, pay attention to this. The point is, the most important point is. Another example of metadiscourse is what we could call hedges. Have you ever heard the phrase hedge your bets? This is where you sort of don't pin down or fall on any one side. You really don't want to put all your money on one horse. Hedges are language that implies doubt. Now, you may have been told to avoid this kind of metadiscourse because it makes you seem less certain. What do you think about that? Are there circumstances in which you really do have doubt? You want to say probably. This could be the case. Well, probably that could happen. There's also a set of phrases that tell your reader you're about to clarify or restate something. Fancy way to say it, a code gloss. These are things like, in other words, oh, I guess I was really supposed to pay attention to that last sentence, and I guess it was tricky and confusing because now the author is telling me again in a different way. Why would you use a phrase like, as you notice? You'd probably use it because you want to make sure your readers are paying attention. You want them to notice whatever comes after this metadiscourse code gloss. So is metadiscourse bad? No. If it helps you clarify to your reader, this is how I'm thinking, this is where my writing is going next, it's incredibly valuable, especially from a rhetorical grammar perspective. Go ahead and take out your book and turn to page 141 to look at the section called For Group Discussion. You'll get a paragraph from The Structure of Scientific Revolutions. I want you to look for metadiscourse. And what I want you to keep in mind is not simply to identify it. Look, I found a code gloss. But what's its purpose? If you find metadiscourse, does it help you understand the paragraph and read it all the way through smoothly? Or do you feel kind of condescended to, like the author is trying too hard? So go ahead and take some time. Enjoy the lovely music while you work on page 141. What do you wonder about this paragraph? Are rhetorical questions questions that you ask for the purpose of rhetoric, not because you want an answer, but because you want people to think and you want to lead them to your next topic? Metadiscourse, does sort of reflect the author's thought process. What did you find in this chapter 9 from Mr. Kuhn? Well, you'll notice it says things have been anticipated in earlier sections. In particular, the preceding discussion has indicated, etc., etc. There is more to be said. And not only that, however, and an essential part of it can be introduced by asking one further question. If he didn't give us a question after that, wouldn't we feel let down? Wouldn't we feel confused? Can you write a good developed argument paragraph without metadiscourse? Do you get to a point where there's too much? Consider this paragraph, which would probably be an introduction to an essay. What it's doing is it's setting up the main argument, the thesis statement. Go ahead and read this and locate wherever you find metadiscourse. Connectors, verbs, code glosses, hedges, anything that draws attention to I am making an argument. Well, at the beginning, we have in this essay, which is definitely drawing our attention to the fact that we're reading an essay, if we didn't already know that. I will discuss metadiscourse verb. Then we get to a certain extent, testing possibly, there's that hedge. On the other hand, here's my contrasting connector. Without testing, students could become lazy. There's another hedge. Could is also a modal auxiliary verb, just to review. And then this author invites us in as we see. It is important to consider. Wow, that's a lot of metadiscourse. Is it too much? What would you cut? What would you keep? Here is the same paragraph with as much metadiscourse as I could manage taken out. Teaching to the test has drawbacks. Testing harms students, but without testing, students are lazy. There are many positive and negative effects to consider with teaching to the test. Does the tone of the passage change? Do you feel like things just got a lot more serious and in your face? Can you still follow along? There aren't any hedges anymore. This has drawbacks. Harms students. Students are lazy. Do you prefer it without the metadiscourse? There's going to be a poll on your quiz for the next class. Which do you prefer? If you had to pick one extreme or the other, which do you like best? And in class, I hope we'll have time to talk about, is there a happy medium? Where on the spectrum would you want to be for the most effective impact on your readers? And it's not just in expository essays where metadiscourse appears. It's a staple of fiction writing as well. Here's some passages from the beginning of Mary Shelley's Romantic era novel Frankenstein. Themes of British Romanticism include nature, individualism, the sublime, imagination. And Shelley's novel is about a scientist, Victor Frankenstein, who wants to create a new race of beings that will basically regard him as a god. He has been pursuing his creation all across the wintry Arctic when on the brink of death, he encounters a ship, and this is what he tells the captain. Remember, I am not recording the vision of a madman. The sun does not more certainly shine in the heavens than that which I now affirm is true. Notice how Frankenstein is calling attention to the truth of the account he's about to deliver. I see by your eagerness and the wonder and hope which your eyes express, my friend, that you expect to be informed of the secret with which I am acquainted. That cannot be. Listen patiently until the end of my story, and you will easily perceive why I am reserved upon that subject. I will not lead you on, unguarded and ardent as I then was, to your destruction and infallible misery. He's not going to reveal the secret of reanimating dead flesh. There are several points in the novel where we're reminded that Frankenstein is telling this entire story while he's sitting on a boat. Does this have a good balance of metadiscourse? You never want to overload your reader. In other words, don't get too meta. If you're constantly announcing your intention, your readers feel talked down to. Don't start every sentence with metadiscourse. Remember, you have the no new contract for cohesion. You don't have to say first, second, third, fourth, fifth. You might end up saying 76th. No, that just doesn't work. The other topic we're going to look at is point of view. Hopefully, you know the difference between first person, second person, and third person narration. Point of view does come a lot from the pronouns that we see in a piece. If a journalist is saying, I went to Bahrain, here's what I saw, there's a different feel and tone than a story that says, the people of Bahrain have many interesting customs, they do the following. Here's what our textbook has to say. about first person in particular. I bet many of you were forbidden from using the first person, I, me, my, we, us, our, in some of your writing assignments. But it's a common point of view. I mean, it's our personal point of view as writers. Why do teachers so often rule it unacceptable in the essays they assign? Does it lead to too much metadiscourse? You have students constantly saying, I believe, I think, I feel, according to me, in my opinion. There's an increasing emphasis, especially in Texas public schools, on balancing personal narrative, where you would use first person, with expository essays, where you can still use first person. This is a question I'm going to ask you to reflect on for your quiz. Why would a teacher forbid you from using first person in your writing? Look at how many personal pronouns are used in these two passages from Frankenstein. The first one is the creature. The second one is Frankenstein himself. The creature, who never has a name, says, listen to my tale. When you have heard that, abandon or commiserate me, as you shall judge that I deserve, but hear me. You accuse me of murder, and yet you would destroy your own creature. I ask you not to spare me. Listen to me, and then if you can, and if you will, destroy the work of your hands. Quite a bit of you, but also quite a bit of me. Here's our scientist response. Cursed be the day, abhorred devil, in which you first saw light. Cursed, although I curse myself, be the hands that formed you. You have made me wretched beyond expression. You have left me no power to consider whether I am just a you or not. Be gone, relieve me from the sight of your detested form. Here we have, in a twisted way, a father and son going back and forth. You, me, I, you. And it really is a battle between the two of them. The creature says, you accuse me. Frankenstein says, you have made me. The creature says, listen to me, hear me. And what does his father say? Relieve me. Get out of here. Could these passages work without the pronouns? I would say no, but you might have a different opinion. Let's look at another passage. These are the final words of the creature. Where do you see personal pronouns? What's the point of view? Where's the focus? What I've highlighted here for you is the number of times that the creature says, I shall. Do not think I shall be slow to perform this sacrifice. I shall quit your vessel, shall seek, shall collect, I shall die. I shall no longer feel, I shall be no more, I shall no longer see the sun or stars. He's looking forward to his own death. And he's doing it in a very poetic way. How would this passage, how would these final words be different from a different point of view? What if someone else had relayed, here's what I remember about what that hideous creature said? Don't we trust information that comes directly from the source a little bit more? If you're looking forward to a teaching career, here are 3 links that give you ideas for how to incorporate point of view into your lessons. Fractured fairy tales, where students are encouraged to rewrite a popular fairy tale from another character's perspective. Tell the story of Little Red Riding Hood as though you were the wolf. Tell the story of Cinderella as though you were the fairy godmother. Here's a link to a Pinterest board that has a collection of pins about point of view. And finally, a government National Endowment for the Humanities site, a lesson plan about point of view in Robert Frost's poem Stopping by the Woods on a Snowy Evening, which famously ends, "And miles to go before I sleep." Don't forget about your quiz. I know that you are probably concerned about your midterm exam on Friday. Check eCourses for the review. Take a deep breath and just be confident in your knowledge of grammar.